As Dave said, this is all about you. This is about your needs. So today we don't have anything sort of scheduled per se in terms of a presentation, so it's wide open. So if you could help us out and in your GoToWebinar control panel, enter in your questions in the question area, then Dave will be able to see those, queue them up. We can try and address as many of them here. If we can address them in this meeting, we will follow up and make sure you get the answers you need. We are very excited about everything that's going on out in the field in terms of what very talented developers are doing with the Alpha platform. The Alpha platform continues to accelerate, grow, get bigger. It's just very, very exciting, and the interest level continues to rise because it's really a cool sweet point kind of tool in terms of its capabilities. But help us today by putting in those questions that you have, and they don't have to be advanced questions. They could be simple new questions. We want all types of questions. You don't have to worry about whether that question should already be known or something like that. That's not how we treat it. We have people from every walk of life, and we have people from every walk of experience, and so it's really critical for us to hear from everybody so we can satisfy you. And what's really exciting is that Dave is really leading the effort, helping me out in terms of really guiding us to help make our presentations, our Q&As, our content better for you, and the more we hear from you, the better job we can do. So I will get off my soapbox, but please enter your questions now. We appreciate it. My name is DM McCormick, and I'm the lead solutions engineer for Alpha. I'm also an independent developer too, and really enjoy using the Alpha product. We're doing just amazing things with it, and there's opportunity almost every day coming up because of what's going on outside in terms of mobile development and the requirement for people to take their desktop applications, even their existing web ones, and really tailor them into mobile devices. Very excited. I want to say first a very big thank you to Mr. David Cates. 2 weeks ago, he joined us and
Last week.
made me look good because he's so darn smart. It's just I appreciate that. He showed some incredible integrations with JTree. You were saying something, Dave?
I think it was just last week, wasn't it?
Was it no, last week we had I'll get to that. We had a guest speaker last week. But I wanted to reach out to David since I wasn't able to do it last week, that he did a phenomenal job, and that's the kind of talented people who are out there using the technology. We're going to be bringing these guys back because obviously you get bored of hearing my voice all the time, so we want to make sure that you get the opportunity to talk to other developers and they can bring their knowledge and experience. It's really fun to do that. The other thing is I'd like to reach out and say thank you very much to Steve Wood. He may not appreciate that picture, but it's a good picture of him. He looks very serious there. He's normally not that serious. But Steve stepped in for me last week when I wasn't able to attend and just did a bang-up job, which I knew he would. And also he fed back to me that he really enjoyed the meeting. And for the individuals who joined us last week with Steve, I just want to say thank you. I mean, your interaction, your questions, the interactivity, Steve came back just beaming saying, it's so great to see all this talent looking for answers, looking for information, and engaging with us, and he really enjoyed that. And as part of that, I want to let you know to reach out to and check out iadn.com. That's iadn.com. And that is Steve's website. It's the Alpha Developers Network, and there's a lot of great resources there, some good training, some great videos. He's got some off-the-shelf products that make your life easier, which he showed last week. And then also there's a whole community of developers on there. So if you're reaching out for other people to help you out on the project or just to bounce questions off, that's a great resource. And I want to make sure people are always aware of that. And so again, I want to say thank you very much to Steve and to David for helping me out. And again, if you guys liked them, we'll bring them back if they have the time, because obviously time is always a challenge. Let's see. Okay, next step.
We have a couple
questions.
Excellent.
Oh, go ahead. Great.
All right, cool. So one thing, and this one I've got actually a couple of from a couple different people over the course of the week. I've gotten emails about this, and they just would like to see a simple example of data being entered into hierarchical sort of structure, a parent-child relationship on a UX. In other words, could you create like a UX and just show us how do I enter something like this? I'm going to enter an order or something like that.
I will give it my best shot.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to click New. Okay, just to for the people who are new, I've switched over and I'm in my Alpha development environment, and I'm on the Web Projects control panel. which is your heart for any of your web development pieces there. And you'll notice over here we have the different types of things that can be in your solution: A5W pages, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, images, etc. And I'm on the web components. Okay, so I'm going to create a UX form, and what a UX control is for the new people, a UX is, think of it as a form. So I'm going to go ahead and click New. And I'm going to create a single table link, and then I'm going to show you how to expand it to a parent-child relationship. That way we can walk through the process. So I've clicked New up here, and it's brought up New File, Web Component. I click Next, and I then click the type of component I want to build. So I want to go ahead and build the UX. By the way, grids also have inherent capabilities in regards to doing multi or parent-child relationships, which we can top on. But it sounds like the important thing for people is the ability to do it within a UX. So I'm going to go ahead and create a UX. Okay. Now remember, one of the cool things about Alpha is the fact that we have a whole bunch of pre-made templates. So if you're creating a mobile application, you can start with something nice. You can put that in there. We've also got examples of what we're talking about here. Check out invoice order. That's actually what I'm going to be showing you a little today. Then we have like customer simple address. So actually these three templates are sort of that parent-child. So they're already built in there. I'm going to walk you through and build one from scratch so you get a little more feel for it. But again, we have these samples that are available for you to open up and inspect. So that's one of the cool things about Alpha, especially for the new folks, is that often there's already a pre-made template or example or a video that's available. The trick is just finding where it's at. But in this case, when I'm creating a new UX, I could create it off a template. But in this case, we're going to start with a UX blank one. So I'm going to click OK. Okay. So now I'm at my UX builder here, and you'll notice over here I have controls. I can then start adding my controls in here. So let's say I'm using the Northwest database, and I'm going to do customer orders, something very simple where you have a list of customers and then they have a series of orders that are associated with them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go in here and I'm going to set up my customer. So I could go into data binding and start setting up data binding, but I find the easiest way to do this is just click one of the controls like text box. Make sure you've got selected create multiple new controls. If you have generate a single control, it's kind of a minimal setup. If we say create multiple new controls, then this all shows up here. So one thing we want to do, hold on one second. Oh, are you hearing me okay out there?
Yep, you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, good. I just, for some reason, it had red on my thing, and I wanted to make sure I'm coming through. So what I'll do here is instead of creating controls manually, what's great is I've got this ability called populate list from a table. So I can click here. It's going to open up a little genie. I'm going to tell it where I'm connecting to, and I've already set this connection called CONN, which is, in this case, the Northwinds database. But this could be MySQL, DB2, Oracle, any kind of off-the-shelf back in there. So I've selected my connection, so it knows where my database is. Now I'm going to say, okay, you know what? What table am I connecting to? So I'm going to connect to, in this case, customers. Okay? And then what I also want to do is I want to have all fields. So I'm going to click all fields. So you'll notice that it immediately brings in all the fields. It also, and I'm going to get rid of these because we don't need these, but it also brings in the data binding information for me and clicks OK. And so once I've clicked this, in a few moments it's building my form, and you'll notice that it put a field for each of my customer ID ones. It also, behind the scenes, if I click like customer ID and I scroll down to my properties, you'll notice that I've linked it to my table customers to the field name customer ID. And that's really, really cool. What that basically allows me to do, which is very powerful. So now if I go ahead and go into this, I have to do one other thing, but this would allow me to immediately set up and do that. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and add a couple other quick little controls right here. The first thing I want to do is I want to put in my record navigation buttons. So I can click record navigation buttons, and you'll notice that it has first, previous, next, last, etc. I'm also going to put in my submit reset buttons. So these are where if I want to submit the data to the database and stuff like that. So basically I have the basics of my form. So let me go ahead and I'm going to go this and parent, child, UX. Okay. So if I run this though, see what happens here. You'll notice that I'm data bound, but the data is not coming in here yet. And the reason is I have to add one other cool little feature, because you'll notice I have my buttons all set up, but you'll notice no data came back. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to go to my server side on dialog initialize. And in this is what runs when this UX shows up. So it's the first piece of deal. And what I want to do is, when I load up this, I'm going to load up all the primary keys. So I'm going to click Action Scripting. And again, just to show people what I did, I went into server side on dialog initialize, put in a couple of spaces there, and then I put Action Scripting, load primary keys for parent table. So this is a real cool little feature, because what it allows it to do is the system automatically looks at that database, pulls out the primary keys, and wires everything up for you. So just click OK and click OK. It's asking me if I want to adjust this. There's no reason to adjust all this kind of thing. And I click OK. So click Save. Now when I go into my working preview, you'll notice something. Aha. And I apologize if it's a little small, but you'll notice that it immediately populated my first record. So before, what happened is that I had data bound these fields to the database. So it knew how to get the data from the database. But I had to make sure when I do my execute server-side action, get primary keys in the on dialog initialize, that's the little code that says, okay, now go ahead and connect to the database, load up the first record, and make everything ready to go. So it just does all that stuff for me. Now, another thing that's cool is you'll notice that if I click next, it's automatically walking me through here. And in fact, let me go ahead and open this up into a browser so you'll see this a little nicer. So you'll see I'm running it in my live preview here. I'm running it in the browser. You'll see that I have my first record filled out and loaded up. And then I click next, and you'll see it takes me the next record, etc. Now, this isn't very pretty. We'd have to do a lot of changes, but that's easy to do from there. But I want to show you it's very easy for you to create data-bound, automatically pulled in forms by just creating the fields automatically from populate from list. That way you don't have to set everything manually. And then putting in the navigation buttons. And last but not least is putting that one little piece of code in the on dialog initialize to get the primaries from there. And the idea is what this does is, again, it just grabs all the primary keys, but then wires everything up behind the scenes so that, like, when I click my buttons here, my next, first, previous, etc., it automatically knows what the primary keys are and walks me through that table. Okay, so we have a very basic, simple parent situation. But now what we want to do is add a child relationship. So let's go ahead and go into my properties right here. So, or into my data binding. Okay, now because I used the populate list from table, it automatically bound everything for me. So normally, you know, a lot of people go through and bind the controls, etc. I'm going to show you how to do that, and I specify the table, but you'll notice that it's already specified the table and the primary key. Okay, so it did that when I created that populate list from tables. It kind of did this for me. And the other thing it did, which was really nice, is it binds the UX component controls to the table fields. So you'll notice that you have the field and then the variable. So this is the different items. So it's binding these for me automatically. So the tool does a lot of that work so you can get it up and running. So you don't have to manually do all this stuff. It's a very straightforward way to do it. Now, what I need to do, though, is that we're going to be displaying in our UX control a child table. Okay, so we have customers, and what I want to do is extend this in this manner to add that child table. So I'm going to click Add Table. Okay, it's bringing up my Genie. I can click the Genie, and in this case, I want orders. So what we're going to do is we're linking customers to orders, and then I can give it an alias, which is some things are for certain databases important. But now you'll notice it's a link of, is it one-to-many or one-to-one? And this is important. This is telling me the relationship between the parent table and the child table. Sometimes there is only one-to-ones just for setting up your database correctly. But in this case, it's a one-to-many, meaning that each parent has many children. So in this case, the parent customers is going to have many orders, and I click OK. So you'll notice now how it's positioned this. You have customers, and then you have your child, which is orders, and it's a one-to-many. Now, the last thing I need to do is tell it, well, how do I link these two together? So that has something called parent link fields. And so I can say the field in this table, let's say it's customer ID is equal to the parent table customer ID, and you'll notice it automatically filled that out for me. So let me walk you through that again. What we did is we said there is a child table orders to a parent called customers, and it's a one-to-many, meaning that there can be many orders for a customers. Now, we still are missing one key piece of information. That is, how do I know which orders have which parent? And so that's what this parent link fields is. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. It opens up this Genie, and it's basically saying, okay, what field in this table is linked to the parent table? So what field in the order ID tells me which parent is? And I know it's that customer ID. So basically every order that is created has a customer ID. And when I select that, notice what happens. This is very cool. It goes, oh, I already found a matching field in the parent table. I'll fill it in for you. You could have manually set that up if you wanted to, but in this case, it already knew it was customer ID. So now we've told it how we're relating the orders table to the customers table. We click OK. There we go. And now we click OK. And OK, no problem. And there we go. And we click OK. So now you'll notice something that on my summary right here, I have customers and orders. And you'll notice also in here, so it knows that relationship in the UX. So let's go back to my controls, and you'll notice we still just have parent data. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create what's called a repeating section. And I'm going to walk through this and then cover it over again. But the idea is I want to display all of those orders sort of in its own little section where it has multiple items. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into click on facts, because that's where I want to insert my area there. Then I'm going to go to containers and put in a container. And in this case, I want to put in a repeating section. And containers are very powerful. I won't spend more time on it today, but containers can be a bunch of different things. It can be panel headers and footers. It can be button groups. It can be flex layouts. It can be absolutely very, very powerful. But for today, we're going to treat the container as a repeating section. So we click OK. So now you'll notice that it put in a beginning and end tag in here, and nothing is in there yet. So we have customer ID, company name, contact name, title. This is all my parent field table. And then I have repeating section, where I'm going to put my child fields. But before I do that, I want to just do a process check, make sure, David, I haven't lost you or it's coming through okay.
Everything looks great, yeah. Keep going.
Excellent, thank you. So now what I need to do is in this repeating section, I want to put in the fields for my child table. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same process I did before, but with a small change. So I'm going to go ahead and click on repeating section, the beginning of it. I'm going to go to controls, and I'm going to go ahead and controls, and I'm going to go ahead and insert a text box. And again, versus me typing them out individually, I'm just going to go ahead and have it bring it back from the table. So I'm going to go to connection. This is exactly what we did before. And I'm going to go to the table name. In this case, it's orders, and I'm going to click OK. Now, I am going to make one change. I'm not going to include the data binding information because I'm doing that myself. If I were starting fresh, I would always do that. But in our case, we just want to bring that in. And I'll show you why in a few moments. So we're going to let it build the fields for me, but they're not going to be connected to the database because there's a different manner to do that. So I click OK. You'll notice that it went through and built all of these fields here, and I click OK. And then we'll go ahead and I'm going to call this customer ID order. Okay. And then what I want to do is actually, let's go ahead and I'm not going to, we're going to put watermark. Okay. So you'll notice it's going ahead and building my sort of subtable, my subfields in there for me. And one thing I want to do is just go through here, and I want them to all appear in a single line. So I'm going to get rid of my line feeds right here. Okay. And only take a few more moments there. We'll do that. Just make sure it looks nice. And there. I wonder if I can select multiple, but I'm just going to do it the way I know it works for our demo here. Okay. Okay, so now we have our fields in there. So I'm going to save this bad boy here. Now, what we've done is we've added the fields, but they're not connected to anything, and they're also there. So let's go back to our data binding. Okay. we're going to bind the controls to my fields, and you'll notice that there's something new. Remember before we had specify tables and bind UX components controls to table fields. So when we first created our setup, we had just a set of fields and then the connection to the database. But now, since we've added a repeating section, it's added this new thing called bind tables to repeating sections. The idea is that I then click on this. I've got my repeating section that I just entered in there, and I click on there, and it's going to show me my child tables. So in this case, orders. So you'll notice that the top level, which is not a repeating section, it's just at the top level, is customers. I have a repeating section 1, which is orders. And by the way, I'll come back to this, but you could have 4 or 5 different repeating sections with 4 or 5 different child tables. So you could literally show, you know, like all the data in your database in one form and have it managed by the system for me. So I click repeating section, orders. So now it knows that if I look at this, I go to repeating section, here it's saying, oh, okay, I know what table I need to go to. So repeating section 1, the one I inserted, was with the order, and so you'll notice these pieces here. And then I just want to put in that customer ID there. So you'll notice that those fields that I just created a few minutes ago is put in right here, and I click OK. So now I have bound, if I go back to my controls, I have my parent table here bound to the parent table. I have my repeating section that is bound to the child table, and in my data binding, it knows how to find that information. And then these fields now are bound to the parent, to the child table. So I'm going to go into working preview, and you'll notice something. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and run it in my view here. Okay, voila, magic happens. Super serious behind the scenes, cool. We have our parent up here, and you'll notice something down here. They're on 2 lines because we have a lot of data, but you'll notice here are the different orders that are associated with ALFKey. And I'm showing the ALFKey name right here, but I wouldn't normally need to do that. But you'll notice it's bringing back all of those orders. So now let me click the next button, and you'll notice it not only updated the parent, but updated the child rows. Click next. Does the same thing, next, etc. So notice what's really cool about this. How many lines of code have I written to do this?
I think you pasted in one, right?
Yes, actually, that I didn't. I didn't even paste it. I pointed and clicked.
You pointed
there is
and clicked.
One,
right.
Okay, Mr. Smart Beep.
Yes.
Mr. Smart Beep. There.
Smart Alec.
But
I'm
no,
sorry. Yeah.
The answer is I didn't actually textually write anything. I clicked a piece of code in existence. But the system is handling that behind it. Now, what's also really cool about this is that because I've done that and put that in there, it completely understands when you insert new rows in here. I don't have the time to go through that today. And if you just go back in and you click, if you go in here, you click a new UX and click on like customers multiple addresses, and I'll go ahead and do that. You'll notice that I've already got a pre-built repeating section. I've got the top level, but also I've got in some other buttons here, and they're all hooked up and wired up so that you can see how all the rest of the pieces go together. And right now, if you click, if I actually run this, I don't think I've bound it to the database. It's got a whole bunch of instructions on how to do this stuff. So you can kind of shortcut. You can watch this video, and then you can also use one of the example templates. But in this submit reset, I can set up, you know, the save to database items. Also within each of these repeating section items, I can create a save, add, etc. So you can add new records. And what's really cool about that is, remember when we went in and did data binding and we specified the table, we told it the parent relationship. So customer is related to orders through that customer ID. So there's a customer ID field in orders. When you're actually adding, in this case, if you want to add a order to this, the system is smart enough to know, oh, I'll automatically set the customer ID to be the parent one for me, so that I only insert items into my database that are related to that specific parent. And then if I delete something, it does it automatically. So the cool thing is this data binding here allows you to bind these tables and have the system know the relationship is, so you don't have to write a whole bunch of SQL commands. You're just putting fields on your table with some action JavaScript buttons to save the data. And remember, you're not limited to just one. So if I click Add Table, I select a table. I wonder if there is one there. Let's say one of these other things like employees, okay? And that one-to-many is related to customers. I could add that table in there, so I could have multiple parent-child. So I could maybe have orders, notes, shipping addresses for customers. And you could then, when you're doing that, what you can do is when you go back to your controls, is you can have one repeating section that is for your orders, but then I could easily go in here and put a new container in here and do another repeating section and call this maybe addresses or whatever. And the cool thing about it is that the system will automatically take care of associating the parent record with this, so I could have multiple repeating sections from different tables. So it's very powerful, very easy to set up these parent-child relationships, and I hope that was a sufficient kind of introduction to how to do that.
That's great.
Because it's all built into the system, and really it's pretty straightforward from there.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We have another question. This time it centers around reports. And the question
by the
is...
way, look at that.
Oh, look at that.
Thunder, lightning, Texas flood. Let's go
Texas
ahead, sir.
flood for the next week. Wow, it looks like every day was like that. My goodness. All right, so this has to do with reports. And the question is, if you're creating a report, a web report, so this would be a layout table type report, how do you add a button to that report, or can you add a button to that report to get it to do something?
That's a great question. I know you can add links, so let me go ahead and go into that. Let me go into my reports. Okay. And let's go ahead and create a new report. Okay. And for those, I want to go through this because for people who are new to this, they may not be aware of the power of the internal reporting tool. If you know, everybody kind of knows Crystal Reports. That was the definitive reporting tool in the 90s. Probably everybody's touched it, used it, seen it, etc. Alpha has an equivalent level capability built into the tool. So you don't have to go out and find a third-party report editor, writer. It's all integrated in there. So I'm going to create a new report, okay? And it's asking me where I'm going to get my data from. I'm using SQL database, but this new capability, which just came out about 6 months ago, is a custom data source where you can actually literally call a function and return the data, which is very cool because then you could literally call a web service behind the scenes and use our report writer on top of third-party web services. Very cool, very simple. But I'm going to use SQL data source, and I'm going to use a quick report, okay? So again, as I mentioned before, it's asking me which connection. I could have multiple connections, okay? It's asking me what table from that, so I'm going to just do a customer one, or yeah, let's do a customer list. I could, if I wanted to, create my own custom SQL or use a stored procedure, which is also very, very powerful because I can pass in arguments to this report. So I can make it dynamic. I can say, send in a region code or send in a country code or something like that. And then I can use that either to filter a table or view, or I could actually write a stored procedure if you're more sophisticated and actually have it do a bunch of stuff inside the database, because a lot of people have already a bunch of functional logic in stored procedures. But for today, I'm just going to say I want all the columns for customers, and I click Finish. Okay. So now you'll notice that I have my field selector. It basically has my fields here, so I'm just going to company name, contact, title, and contact name.
Dion, sorry to interrupt. I just want to let you know I need to step out for a few minutes. The fire alarm is actually going off here at Alpha HQ. Hopefully nothing serious, but since you're remote, I'll just let you keep going. So I'll be back as soon as I can. Thanks.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and preview this report, and you'll notice it's a pretty straightforward report. You basically have 3 columns here, nothing super fancy. Again, for the people who are new to this, I can go in here and do like groupings. Let's say I group it by company name. Now when I preview this, it's going to have the company name and it's going to group the contacts below it. A lot of cool things like that. But I just want to go ahead and we'll leave that for now. There's a lot more stuff. So I'm going to click Open in Report Editor. Since this is a quick report, I want to go into our full-blown report editor. So I'm going to go into a layout table report, and I'm going to open a copy of this report in there, and I'm going to call it button report. Okay. Okay, so now we're in our full-blown report editor. So what you saw before right here was our quick report generator, just to put things together very quickly. But now we're in our full-blown one. And you'll notice then I have all of my field data on the right. You have your full layout here. Think of it as setting up tables. You can adjust widths, heights, I can adjust things like this. I could add columns, I could change columns and stuff like that. In fact, I'm gonna click here and I'm gonna add a new column. So you'll notice now I have a new column right here and I can say, like test, okay? So I'll have that there. And what's cool about this is that think of these as each one of a cell of a table. So if I preview this, you'll see it looks pretty much what we did there before, but we have more data here. So I can go in here and I can double click on there and I can put in static text. I could select a field. Let's say I want to put in the city. Click OK. Click Go. You'll notice now I'm putting in the city right here. So you have a lot of powerful, but it gets much better than that. You can put in an expression, which is maybe like a calculation. So you can put city plus state or something like that. You could put in a static image, static HTML, absolute linked report, a chart, static, embedded. I mean, there's so many things you can do which are really, really powerful within there. And you're able to do that from that standpoint. Now, what's also cool about this is that we can put any kind of HTML we want to do in there. So for instance, if we wanted to put a button in there, I'm going to go ahead and put a link in there. Let's see, we'll edit this in the editor. And I'm just going to put in here, click me, and then I'm going to go ahead and highlight that, and then I can turn that into a button if I want to. So I'll go to the what see is what you get, and then I can make that a hyperlink kind of button kind of scenario. So you have complete freedom on how you format and put this data in here and add to that from that standpoint. Now, the report editor also has a whole bunch of other capabilities, like we were talking about putting in objects in there. So the traditional way is that we can't, because the only things that can be handled in a report are HTML, bitmaps, and RTNF. So the way I would handle that is I would put in a static image, and this can be an image in my web project, or it could be a built-in image. So let's say I just want to put in a cool built-in image like the alpha, okay? And then I can set that up from there. Okay, so now when I run this, I could have this image to be sort of like a button, that standpoint from that standpoint there. Now, the other thing I can do, which is very powerful, is that I could either put in a static image or make that a static HTML. But what I can do is I can essentially put in the button image right here, but also insert a JavaScript. So I can make it like a hyperlink. So for the person who wants to put in a button, and let me go ahead and go right in here for a second. Let's say go as HTML button. Okay, so let me go ahead and do this. I'm just going to do a little research. So let's say we have a button right here. Okay. Let's see if this works. I'm going to just a little bit flying blind, but I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to put in here static HTML, and I'm going to go ahead and put the button in there, and let's see if that works. I'm curious. Yep, okay. You'll notice I have a button here on each one of those, and I'm in preview mode, so I can't actually click on it here, but you can see there's a button in there. And if I go in there, let me exit the preview, make this a little wider, and let me get rid of, let's go ahead and save this. We can get rid of, I could get rid of that text or that button behind it. Now, the other thing we can do in that button, which is really cool, is that this is just JavaScript. So now I can add on here, and I'll go ahead and do a search right here, HTML button JavaScript. Okay. So now what we can do is we can add an on-click event to that button. So I'm going to go back here. Going to go in here. I'm going to change this button now. Now, for you guys who are kind of new to this, what's going on is that, and kind of newer to HTML, is that we have our button control with click me, but now I've said is when a person clicks on it, run this function. And that function is a JavaScript function. So what I would do is, so if I run this now, and again, it won't show me, well, actually, let's go ahead and give this a try. Let's go ahead and So the idea is that you could then associate with this button a JavaScript function that you've created in your UX, and then fire that JavaScript function when the person clicks on that button. And what's cool too about this is that if I need to feed this function one of these fields, I can click, for instance, feed it contact name. So I can feed that JavaScript function the contact name for this row, and then therefore when it runs, I can pass it that dynamic data to actually run there. So that is kind of the quick and dirty way to do it in HTML. Now, what I would like to do is show something else, is that if we go ahead and open this here as a freeform report, so again, what I was doing in here was I was creating a report, and this is what's called a table layout report, which is really oriented towards web. But there's no reason to say you couldn't also create, and bear with me here, go back to my report generator. I'm going to create a freeform report, okay, and I'll go button freeform report, okay. So now I have a lot more flexibility, because think this is going to be rendered as a PDF. So now what I can do is actually, I have all these rich, so I can actually drag in, I can click over here on button, and I can click OK there, and then I can say, you know, whatever that button is, I can use XBasic, I can run a script, I can do all that stuff there. So I can click next, and I'll finish it, and then when I actually run this, I have a button right here that if I click on that button, it's going to run a little XBasic script or something like that. So that's the alternative way to create buttons on there. But there's a difference. This is a what's called a like a free-form report. So therefore, it's not going to render as HTML on the front end. It's going to be rendering maybe as a PDF. Over here, this is an HTML table layout report, so it's going to render as HTML. So the background on that is that you're going to be able to render it on mobile devices and other things like that. So I hope that gives you enough kind of information to be dangerous. But the way I would do is, if I were using HTML layout, I would just add a HTML button. I would have it fire a JavaScript function, and then in the UX control that hosts this this report, you can set JavaScript functions in there to do a whole bunch of other things, XBasic callbacks, alerts, everything you need to do, and that would probably be the best way to handle that capability. So that's just a quick and dirty. I hope that kind of touched on it. It maybe didn't answer it fully, but what it allows you to do is become it allows you to add buttons to both table layout reports, which are HTML focused, and the other pieces from there. So, okay, let's see, I'm gonna come down here. Okay, interesting question. We have a very interesting question, and this is kind of a great one to touch on, is that Eddie asked me, how does AA work, or Alpha Any work with NoSQL? And the answer on that is pretty cool. The answer is absolutely you can work with NoSQL. And if I go ahead and go in here, and let's go Alpha Anywhere MongoDB. Let me see if I have that. There's an article in here. Okay, here you go. Let me go ahead and go in here. I'm going to send this to everybody because this will be much more than that. So let me go ahead and show this to everybody. Go Alpha Anywhere MongoDB. And I'll come back and give a little bit more information on that. There's, let me actually go to this one here, and I'll send this to everybody. This shows you how to do that. Okay, so let me go ahead and I'm going to put and type out to everybody. Let's see, do that. Everybody send to all. Okay, so everybody should have the link for this here. But let me go back into here, and let me go into my development environment, and let me go on to a UX. I'm going to create a new UX. Okay. Let me go ahead and create actually a new UX, excuse me. Okay. I am going to then add what's called a list control, which is our alternative to a grid. And I'll go list Mongo. Okay. Okay, so once that's on there right there, I'm going to open up this list, and you'll notice over here I have my data connection. So what a list is you can connect this and it will represent tabular data or freeform data in a list on the control. Now you'll notice that when I double clicked on the list, I have different data sources type: SQL, DBF, static data, custom, data series, JavaScript, and OData, which is brand new, just about to come out, still in beta. But I'm going to go ahead and click on custom. Now what custom is very cool. Custom, when you go to populate a list with custom, it actually runs an XBasic function call. So normally you're going to connect to SQL databases, and that's kind of the normal operation. But sometimes you're going to be connecting to sources such as web services, or in this case, a NoSQL database where we don't have a native driver in there. And the team is reviewing that and looking at maybe we can make the more popular there, but there's little tricky parts to it. They're trying to incorporate those simple things. But the way to do it now is you do custom. And what the custom XBasic function does is basically when this list gets presented, it runs this function, and that function then generates the data that's presented back to the list, which is very powerful because you could call different services, you could call web APIs, you could do tons of cool stuff there to put in there. Now, the question is now, okay, that's great, but let me go back over here. How do I get my information out of Mongo? And you'll notice that Alpha has created a MongoDB, which is one of the more popular NoSQL databases, object to help out. So you'll notice that we have dim Mongo as an extension. The extension is create a connection to your MongoDB instance there. And you'll see you can insert data, you can update data, you can delete it. But this is the one you want right there. Is if you're just trying to retrieve data, then what will happen is you can run this code in that XBasic. It will pull that data back, and then what's great is then this data right here is what populates the list. So it's going to be a combination of creating a custom XBasic function that uses, say, the MongoDB to connect to NoSQL. Mongo delivers its information back as JSON, and one of the great things about it is that you just then feed that cleaned up JSON to the list, and it will represent it for you, and it will handle it. Now, one other little thing about this, and this is really important, is that if you are planning on using the disconnected capabilities of the list, it really currently, everything is kind of handled for you when you do SQL, meaning that it handles retrieving data. It also handles if you update data and then you synchronize back to the backend database. It will handle everything for you. Since it's SQL, we already have the built in there. If you're going to build a backend that's off Mongo, now if you're just pulling data, then don't worry about this. You're golden. You're great if you're just grabbing data from that database. But if you're going to have the disconnected list in the field, synchronize changes to that Mongo database or NoSQL database back, then you're just going to need to be able to handle the synchronization aspect, and we give you the hooks for it. We basically say, how do you want to synchronize the data, and then you have to write a little bit more code. So, SQL is out of the box, easy, double click, off to the races kind of scenario. If you're using Mongo, you're doing read only, you're golden. You can just use the technique I showed before, create an XBasic function, go back in the back end, use those Mongo to connect to Mongo, say in this case, and then once you present that data, it will display it. But if you want to actually edit that data in the field and then send it back, you will have a little extra work to then synchronize the data. And basically, we give you the hooks. When the user clicks synchronize, it says, okay, how do you want to handle it? So then you can write a little piece of code to pull the current version in the back end, look at the current fields, do the comparison, warn the user, and there's examples of how to do that. In fact, there's some great documentation that's available online on the Alpha site talking about how to handle disconnected data and setting up your own synchronization routines. But I'd like to give you a heads up so that you know ahead of time, if you go down that road, just be prepared to do a few more steps. And it's not rocket scientist work. It's pretty straightforward, and there's examples available in other pieces. So I hope I've answered that question in terms of, if you're going to do that, use Mongo, then you want to probably use a list with an XBasic function, and that function then would use the Mongo item to then do the retrieving of data from that back-end system. And then you'll also notice that it has a full support for inserting that data back into the database there. And Mongo's really cool. There's a lot of neat things about it. I mean, more and more people are starting to use those because it accelerates your database or your creation because you're working with objects instead of database tables. But it's a trade-off. You know, there's certain things you give up, certain things that are good. But I'm seeing that more and more people are using it because you can put together systems fairly quick because you don't have to go through the whole database design aspect. You can create basically JSON objects and store those JSON objects as blobs or as chunks of data in Mongo, and then address them from there. So pretty neat stuff. And that's a great question. I really want to say thank you, Eddie, for that. I hope that gives you kind of the hints on what you would like to go on that and do, or I hope that gives you enough to be dangerous and you're able to go ahead and look into that. Now, that is on there. We have time for about one more question today. There's a good question here. It's from Harrison. Thank you, Harrison. I'd like to use a forum to ISDN or SCD to go to the web, web.com or scrape screen. Okay, basically Harrison has asked, he wants to build a front end that will allow you to put in a code, an ISDN or ASA ID, that then will go to Amazon or IMDb to do screen scraping and collect that information and then save it in there. And that's kind of beyond the scope of today, but what I would like to do is show you a couple little areas you can look into that will give you examples of that. So first, let me do, let's see, Bob Moore, iTunes mobile, okay.
By the way, Dan, we've returned safely back to the building.
Oh, good.
There Burlington Fire Department. Yeah, I don't know.
The roof is on fire. So there's a great one there. I'll have to find. I might have to get your information and send it to you. But Bob Moore has done exactly something like this, where he has created a mobile solution that actually makes a call to the iTunes backend. Now, this isn't screen scraping, but it's doing a call back to it. And I wonder if it's on here. Let's see. Search.
Yep.
I'm going to have to send that. I don't want to spend too much time trying to find it, but oh, wait, maybe I can search this way. He's got it really cool because he actually uses the barcode. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to send this link to everybody. Check out this page on here. So your first step is on here. There's a talking about PhoneGap integration, and he actually shows some really cool stuff like using a barcode scanner to grab the barcode off of an album or a CD and then query the iTunes there, which is pretty cool. And then also there's a new one here, and I've looked at this.
Okay, I think I've actually found where the code is for that, which might even.
Oh, cool! Awesome.
I was talking to Bob the other day, and yep, there it is. Scan and search iTunes. Okay. I will show you how to get there.
That's what we want.
If you go into your web applications control panel, and you want to add.
Okay, I'm going to go in there.
You want to add a component.
There.
Hang on, while I take a look at your screen. So I just found it on mine. Not a new component. We're going to add an existing component. So you're going to say add file. So you can go ahead and close that dialog box. Just go ahead and hit cancel, and just the green add file button, right? Okay. So find where Alpha Anywhere is installed. So that's going to probably be on your C drive, under program files.
Right there, C, program files.
Alpha 5 version 12. Now scroll down to the PhoneGap section. There you go. And now under examples, example 1, grab that component right there. All right.
Okay.
And that'll appear under PG1. There it is. So go ahead and open that in edit mode or whatever. And if you take a look at working preview, I believe this is the example that we're talking about, scan and search titles.
Beep,
now,
vibrate.
Yeah, this doesn't work because you need PhoneGap for some of these
things. Plug-in.
And PhoneGap will be probably a requirement if you're going to do barcode.
Like a scan.
Yep, and a scan.
Yeah. But you could look at this in the code for a scan.
Yep.
Scan barcode is the code in here. So if we go into JavaScript, and it's very well documented. So Okay. Let's see. Fire Flash. There we go. Okay. So this is the actual function that's run when I click there, and it's using the Cordova plugin to grab the data there. But in here, you can also see what's going on. So
And there's
pretty
the
cool stuff.
iTunes callback. So he's actually making a web service request with an ISBN
Ajax
number
callback cross domain.
from iTunes.apple.com, and he's able to get the information back. So he does have a good video
Exactly.
on that, which I think you just pointed folks to. But the actual code is there too. I guess it's been there a while, but it had been hidden, so I just found it a couple
Yeah,
days
I
ago.
know. Sneaky, sneaky.
Yep.
And then also, just to let you know, is that I've just posted this. There's some discussions on how to do some screen saving. And I'm not old. Let's see, this is about a year, no, 2 years old, but it's fairly current.
Mhm.
Um, but it gives you some example code right here, how to go through and do those pieces there. Again, a bit older, but gives you some hints on how to do screen saving. The one thing you want to look at more importantly is anywhere request object. And what it is built into Alpha Anywhere, and this is on the wiki, is the request object. And what the request object is basically that HTML request that goes across the web to say, ping this website, and it gives you everything in there. And the key thing it does is that it grabs all the raw data, all the information from a request. So if you ping a web page, you're going to get that web page content back in this body, and then you can scrape the data from there. So this is going to be your favorite little object, and I'm sending that out to everybody, is that if you're going to do anything in terms of like calling other services and stuff, you need to get to know the request object, and that will really answer a lot of the questions on how to do that and how to put together what the request is. And there's some great examples to show you how to grab data from other sites, manipulate it, do the things you need to do.
Great. Well, we don't have a lot of time left, but I see a question has come in about cybersource.com, which is an online payment gateway. And the question is, how does Alpha Anywhere or can Alpha Anywhere interact with merchant account providers or online payment gateways so that you could process credit cards in your application?
Well, I'll go ahead, Dave. I think you have a little better view on me on the current collection of already gateways we've already integrated with
Okay.
and have code ready to go.
Well, we have authorize.net, which is one. And if you do a Google search for Alpha, I'd go Alpha 5 this time. That's the previous version, but the integration is exactly the same. Also, recently, our VP of Mobility, Bob Moore, has been working on integration with Stripe, which I believe is just about done and will come out in an upcoming version as well. So if you have specific questions, though,
And
about
WorldPay now,
and
also.
WorldPay integration, I'm sorry, yes, of course, they're one of our preferred online payment partners. So if you've got a specific question or you just want a little bit to sort of to point you in the right direction, if you could send an email out to guides@alphasoftware.com, I could certainly gather together the information that we have. So, but quite a few people are doing credit card payments in their applications, especially the software as a service providing customers of ours.
Excellent. Great questions.
Let's see, and David Cates actually points out that PayPal is also pretty easy to get to as well. So
Yeah,
that's
actually,
another one.
PayPal is very straightforward
Probably
to
one of the
implement.
easiest one. Almost an HTML implementation there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So I don't see any more questions though for today. I guess everyone's questions are answered. We had a great attendance today though compared to other weeks. I mean,
Someone
it's 20
also
people.
said Braintree is also pretty simple to
Braintree is
integrate
the
with.
other one. Yeah.
hmm I haven't even dealt with that one. I'm very familiar with PayPal. So
Braintree payments. So and that's I think they're located in New York or something like that. But
yeah,
they do everything,
and I
including
like the direction
Bitcoin.
too. Yeah, and what's kind of cool in those areas too is a lot of them are moving towards the token-based stuff where you don't ever record the credit card information in your own database.
Right.
You just feed it out to the other system. They give you a token that is, a secure way for you to interact with the payment system. Therefore, you never really hold your customers' credit card data in your system, thus avoiding the Home Depot, Target,
Yeah. No, that is a
fiascos that are
serious
happening
issue.
almost daily.
Yeah. We do not store credit cards here either, and we always pass that off to the outside providers. That's really the best way to do it. You don't have to worry about PCI compliance and the very massive fines that you can result if you don't keep your application locked down while you have credit card information. So if you work with one of these folks, they all pretty much now will keep you protected from that. So the information is entered basically into their site. It looks like your form, but at no point is it stored in your database, which is great.
That's why they get paid the big bucks.
That's why they do get paid the big bucks.
Take that liability.
Yeah. So that's it. Another vote here I see in our comments section for Stripe. So as being the coolest one. Stripe among programmers
Stripe
apparently
is really cool.
the one that's
it's a
really
much more
popular.
modern version. The only thing I heard about Stripe is it takes a while to get paid, but that's more of a business than a technology.
That's the case with quite a few of them, though. They're going to hold quite a lot of the money in reserve, especially if you are new. Some won't take you on at all unless you already have a payment processor. But
we all love annoying. Float, don't we? I'm a big fan of Float.
Float, yeah, exactly.
If you're on the right side of it.
Right. So a question is, where do we find the webinar recordings? That might be our last question for today. Dion, can I actually ask you to go over to the videos.alphasoftware.com?
Okay. Look at that, already in mine.
Look at that. Scroll down to the bottom where we keep, these are sort of the highlighted videos, featured videos, getting started videos, but that blue button down there, go to the documentation library. That's where we keep the big cache of videos. And if you just go up and type the word webinar up at the top, this is where we keep them. So any ones that aren't there will be added there. We do have a couple people working on getting those edited and posted. So if you click search, we've got a whole bunch.
Someone's been burning the midnight oil here, getting those passwords.
Yeah, well, that's right. We caught up with them about a month ago. We had to get all the old ones up, but they'll keep going. We'll keep adding them as they show up. So that's the place. They will also be posted on YouTube. They show up every week on YouTube as well. But just to make it easier, we do have this search interface. So.
And remember, there's a difference, Dave and Dion.
There is a difference. People often ask that. They're like, "Are you brothers or something?" We're in fact not related. Amazing.
There are 3 letters of difference between the two of us.
Wow, astounding.
That's all there is.
Well, thank you very much, Dion, for presenting today, and thank you everyone who attended. If you want to send out a question that we didn't get to today, please send it off to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com, and I will make sure that the right person gets your question and that you get your question answered. So thanks again for attending, and we hope to see you at a future webinar. Take care, and goodbye.